Robert Redford was one of the towering names of modern Hollywood. And news of the 8-9-year-old actor's passing early this morning at his Utah home stunned audiences worldwide. Music. Some legends leave behind more than films. They leave behind secrets, rivalries, and stories that echo even after the curtain falls. As tributes poured in, the whispers grew louder. Behind that polished smile and golden image was a man who held on to grudges that never quite healed. Fractured friendships and quiet rivalries that shaped an extraordinary career. One name in particular stands out. It's an icon so powerful and unforgettable that few expected him to appear at Redford's final farewell. What could keep to Hollywood titans so distant, even at the end? When the sad news broke on September 16, 2025, a wave of reflection swept across Hollywood and beyond. Viewers everywhere paused to remember a figure who defined American cinema for more than 6 decades. An actor of box office magnetism, an Oscar-winning director, and the creator of the Sundance Institute, which forever changed independent film. And yet, as the memorials arrived, many thought about how quietly he had eased away from the spotlight long before his death. The pivot came in 2018 when he finally spoke plainly about retiring. While promoting The Old Man and the Gun, he confirmed it would be his last acting role. Playing an aging bank robber who couldn't resist one more run felt like a sly metaphor for his own life. I figure now, as I'm getting into my 80s, it's maybe time to move toward retirement and spend more time with my wife and family, he told the Associated Press. Even so, Redford couldn't quite resist one final bow. In 2019, he returned for a brief cameo in Avengers Endgame, once again portraying Alexander Pierce, the character he had introduced in Captain America, the Winter Soldier. The moment was short but meaningful. Redford had built his name on intimate dramas and character pieces, so his appearance in the Marvel Universe surprised many. He explained he was curious about the new technologies reshaping blockbuster film. The Russo brothers later said he told them on set that the day's work would be his last day of acting. An elegant closing chord to a remarkable screen career. After that, he receded further from Hollywood. In 2020, he sold a long-held Utah horse ranch, refocusing on his Provo Canyon home and the Sundance property at the heart of his identity beyond acting. Utah wasn't just where he lived. It was where he nurtured Sundance into a cultural force that launched countless careers. Those final years moved at a gentler pace, surrounded by family and nature. He immersed himself in painting, environmental causes, and quiet days with his wife, Sybil Saugers. Staying close to children and grandchildren in a life organized around art and the outdoors rather than fame. He even retired from leading roles. Redford never abandoned storytelling. He kept producing and played a meaningful behind-the-scenes role on AMC's Dark Winds, which premiered in 2022. In 2025, he made a small on-screen appearance in the show's 2nd season. A quiet, weighty moment precisely because of its rarity, and it proved to be his final performance. Passing peacefully at home in Sundance concluded a life lived on his terms. The tributes made clear the breadth of his influence. Filmmakers thanked Sundance for opening doors. Fans recalled the unforgettable characters, but his death also resurfaced his complicated reputation. A man admired for integrity, who nonetheless clashed with powerful people. Leaving observers to wonder who would and who wouldn't attend his funeral. Beneath the surface calm, Redford's life was marked by profound personal struggle. As a child, he faced a mild case of polio, an illness that terrified families across America. He recovered, but the brush with frailty stayed with him. Worse followed. In 1955, at just 18, he lost his mother Martha to complications during childbirth, an absence he later called the most painful event of his youth. That loss left a permanent imprint, lending him the introspective air people sensed even when the world celebrated him as a golden boy. After her death, home life in Van Nuys, California grew more complicated. Though surrounded by people in a working-class neighborhood, he often felt apart, more comfortable in his own thoughts than in crowds, a thread that ran through his early years. Marriage to historian Lola Van Vagenen in 1958 seemed to open a hopeful chapter. Then tragedy struck again. Their first son, Scott, died at only 10 weeks from sudden infant death syndrome. Redford rarely discussed it publicly, but the grief never left. He and Lola went on to have Shauna, James, and Amy, and for years that family steadied him as his career took flight. Decades later, the shadow returned. James, long battling a rare liver condition that required 2 transplants, built a meaningful career as a filmmaker and activist focused on the environment and social issues. But in 2020, he died at 58 from bile duct cancer. Redford, then 84, said he was heartbroken. To lose one child is a pain that never heals. To lose two across a lifetime is a weight even he struggled to carry. His marriage to Lola endured nearly 3 decades, ending in 1985. True to form, he never fed speculation, guarding his private life with the same resolve he brought to his art. Years later, he found companionship with German artist Sibi Sagers, marrying in 2009, and built a later life centered on art, nature, and privacy. Far from the industry that defined him, unlike many stars of his generation, he had no appetite for turning family into a public narrative. He'd seen too much loss. The best protection for those he loved was distance from the cameras. That instinct for independence shaped his career. Redford was one of the world's most recognizable actors. Yet, he never fully fit the Hollywood machine. From the start, he disliked studio politics and bloated bureaucracy. Where others compromised, he often chose the harder path. Insisting on creative control even when it caused friction, an early flashpoint came with The Great Gatsby in 1974, cast as Jay Gatsby. Redford bristled at script issues and casting choices, and he made his frustration known. He even refused to attend the premiere, an unheard-of move for a star of his stature, telegraphing how far he'd go to stand by principle. He clashed with executives over creative direction, walked away from films he felt were mishandled, reportedly leaving a project called Blue at the last minute, and nearly quit Indecent Proposal over story development. To studio bosses, he was both bankable and unpredictable. He also cultivated a notorious habit of arriving late or skipping meetings. Lesser stars might have paid dearly for that. Redford's talent, box office clout, and growing influence as a filmmaker and activist kept doors open. He wasn't rebellious for its own sake. He genuinely believed Hollywood's fixation on money and control smothered artistry. That conviction yielded one of his greatest legacies. Founding the Sundance Institute and the Sundance Film Festival, a haven for independent storytellers who didn't want their voices watered down for mass appeal, the impact is hard to overstate. Directors like Quentin Tarantino, Chloe Zhao, Ryan Coogler, and countless others first found daylight there, using Sundance as a launchpad to reshape the industry. To Redford, Sundance was more than a festival. It was a counterweight to Hollywood's commercial reflex. Space for risk, new voices, and personal vision over predictable blockbusters. His independence extended beyond film. He was outspoken on social and political issues when many stars stayed silent, advocating environmental protection, Native American rights, and queer community causes, and he often chose projects aligned with those values. The Candidate and All the President's Men entertained while embodying his belief in questioning authority and holding power accountable. Art and activism weren't separate. They were intertwined. Of course, that outspokenness and refusal to play along didn't always win friends. Rumors dogged him that he quietly vowed not to work again with certain actors or directors after conflicts. True to character, he rarely named names. He believed silence was stronger than feuds. Colleagues respected and feared that reserve. You always knew where you stood with him, even if he never said it aloud. That same resolve lay behind one of the most painful fractures of his career, his split with one of the 20th century's most important screenwriters. When people map Robert Redford's ascent, they inevitably arrive at William Goldman. Goldman's scripts defined eras, none more so than Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, which gave Redford his breakout and linked him to Sundance for life. Goldman won 2 Academy Awards for screenwriting and stood among Hollywood's sharpest pens. Early on, he and Redford felt like a perfect pairing. Goldman provided structure and sparkling dialogue. Redford brought star power, charisma, and keen instincts about how characters should live on screen. Together, They made movie history. But beneath the success, creative differences simmered. Eventually boiling over on All the President's Men in 1976, Redford had optioned the Woodward. Bernstein Book himself produced the film and starred as Bob Woodward. The project wasn't just another movie. It was a statement about journalism, truth, and power. He wanted every detail right. Goldman was hired to adapt the book. On paper, a dream fit. But as production moved forward, Redford and director Alan J. Pula grew dissatisfied with Goldman's drafts. Feeling the pages were too stylized and didn't capture the granular grind of investigative reporting, Redford later claimed he and Pakula rewrote large sections, leaving roughly 10% of Goldman's script intact. Publicly saying so hit Goldman hard.